that's just how I see it right now. And obviously, trading him for Trey is just it's a no brainer. I mean, you don't want to get rid of any of the other guys like that you have on the roster right now because you don't want to give them up for nothing. Like if you want to let them build their value a little bit before the trade, like for the trade deadline, I mean, I think that's a good thing. Sorry, I had something like coming on in my ear like that. I couldn't hear.
You're good.
But
You're good.
anyway, yeah, I think it's a good thing to let him get some time down there and figure some things out overall, though. I think that's just my general opinion on it.
Right, and as you hinted at, they're going to get more of an extended look at a guy like David Dahl, who I don't think
Right.
anyone expects him to be your starting left fielder in Game 1 of the NLDS. I would be shocked if that was the case, and I would honestly be kind of worried if that was the case. Like even if he played well in the regular season, I don't think there's any way he can like earn that spot. But I
Yeah.
certainly think if he plays well, he will be the left-handed bench bat. So he's really fighting for that right now. What would really suck is if you get in a situation where he plays well up until the trade deadline and then you don't add a left-handed bench bat and then he's terrible after that, which that would be the very Phillies thing to happen. So I honestly like, regardless of how David Dahl for me, he would have to play out of his mind to stick on this roster.
Yeah.
I like what he did early on. I like what he's done in AAA. I just don't see him as like, even for this year, I don't see him as like a long-term piece come October. So, but you're going to get a look at him and that's beneficial. I think you're going to see Whit Merrifield play a little bit more. Saw today, Sosa was taking fly balls in left field during batting practice. Obviously, they're going to try to mix him in there. I believe he has played in left before. I know last spring training they tried to play him in center. Obviously, that did not work out too well. Like you can't just be athletic. There's a lot more that comes with it. But you could certainly stick him in left, and he could probably survive out there off of his athleticism alone. So I would like to see Sosa get some reps out there just to get his bat in the lineup because I don't know if the Dahl Witt platoon is going to produce enough for you offensively, but maybe Witt playing more often, maybe that'll be beneficial for him. And that could honestly keep him on the roster past the deadline too, because while I think it's very likely that he's still on the team, I honestly wouldn't rule it out that he is not on the team past the deadline right now, because then you see up in Boston what happened this past week. He had the throwing error that cost us multiple runs in that game. So again, I don't see that really like I don't see him doing much that'll make the Phillies a DFA him and then just eat the money. I really think he's going to be on this roster by the end of the year. But point being, you're going to get extended look at these guys. Like Anthony said, you're going to get Pache in center for some of these days too, probably when there's a left-handed pitcher on the mound as well. So you're going to get a look at all these bench guys, and you're going to be able to see who you want to keep around past the deadline and who you want to maybe make a move for to replace as a fourth outfielder. So obviously Jim Bowden said yesterday they could look at a starting outfielder and a bench outfielder. I don't know if they necessarily go that route. I think two would be a lot, but I could certainly see it happening. Like I wouldn't rule it out. So outside of Rojas, even, I mean, I didn't even talk about this really on the shorter video I did earlier today. All those guys, it's going to be really important to see kind of who rises and who falls over the next month or so, because again, all of them are going to get their opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you because I mean, you got to give these guys a chance, and I think that's what the Phillies are going to do, like you said. So I don't know. I think they're going to definitely go for a starting outfielder at the deadline. I mean, I don't really think they have a choice because you can't go out there with the offense that they're getting out of the outfield right now and go into the playoffs and expect to win. Because Castellanos has been terrible. Marsh has really fallen off since the beginning of the season, and obviously he was hurt. So, I mean, that kind of threw a wrench in it. But Rojas, he's really gave you nothing. I mean, he's been just not good offensively, and we kind of expected that, but I think there were some people, myself included, that thought he could do something more than he did last year in the playoffs, because you just can't have a guy out there with a batting average below 100 in the playoffs. It's just, you just can't do it. And I mean, yeah, I think Dahl, I mean, he definitely has the potential to be good because he's done it before and he's done it in the major leagues. So, I mean, if there's one of them I think that's going to be here after the deadline, it's probably going to be Witt just because of the money, like you said. But I like Dahl, and I think he could definitely earn a spot past the deadline if he plays well.
Sure. Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit more about Rojas here too. Look, again, like you said, Drew, he was just not playing well enough. There was no way you could keep him up here. Again, he was really the only guy that could be sent down, and it was just about time to be sent down, right? Like the guy had a sub 600 OPS. He had a 271 on base percentage. It just wasn't going to cut it. And the sad thing is, I see a couple Castellanos comments here. He was probably playing better than Castellanos in a number of aspects of the game. Obviously not the power aspect, but That's about it. Like, I mean, I know he's delivered against some lefties this year over the past couple weeks, but outside of hitting against Nick Pivetta, I can't think of too many times where he's really done a lot of damage versus a righty. So he's obviously been better as of late, but I just don't think anyone has a ton of faith in him right now. But at the end of the day, he's halfway through his contract right now that we're halfway through the year, and there's a lot of money there. Also, I don't think the Phillies are looking to make that change. Like I would love to talk about making that change at some point, but they have money tied up there for one. He's a guy who the clubhouse really likes too. I don't think this is a major impact, but Castellanos does know him from the Tigers days too. I think Dave Dombrowski. I think Dave does have a good relationship with Castellanos. If I had to guess, I'm not in the clubhouse or in the building, but it just doesn't seem like. Not that I don't want to talk about it. It just doesn't seem worth talking about because I just don't think there's anything that's going to change there necessarily with Castellanos, except maybe they get that fourth outfielder type. I think would be someone who maybe you have them pinch hit in a spot for Castellanos in the playoffs or in certain situations. That's really all I would see. But again, they really believe in just letting him play through it. And because he believes in that too, they're just going to continue to ride it out with him. I'm not saying it's the right move. I'm not saying it's going to work out. I'm just saying that's what's going to happen, unfortunately. I just don't see any reality in which he's not the starting right fielder on this team come October.
Yeah, I mean, he's really just been a total disappointment for two of his seasons out of pretty much the 2.5 he's been here. He's had he's had some good flashes here and there. Like recently he's played better, but the last couple games he's just been absolutely terrible. Like that Baltimore series, it just can't happen. I mean, that's a good team, and you're going to see them most likely if they make it in the playoffs. They're going to make it into the World Series because they're really good. I mean, they got a long way to go, obviously, and it's no guarantee. They are definitely one of the top 3 teams in the AL, I would say. And if you're going to have to go through them, they have nasty right-handed starting pitching. So Castellanos has got to be better than that. And I mean, I wouldn't even play him against Corbin Burns, to be honest with you. It's a nightmare matchup. So I don't know. It's been a terrible contract for the Phillies so far. And I think if they were going to take a mulligan on one of their contracts, that's probably the one. I mean, Taiwan was good last year, and Castellanos was not for the most part. And I think the Phillies just regret that a lot. But hindsight 2020. I mean, you never know. We were all excited when he signed here, so we can't hate.
Yeah, I remember saying that Schwarber was kind of the consolation prize that offseason in free agency. And again, we've said this a number of times, but you really wish those contracts were flipped right now to where Schwarber has the extra year. It's really unfortunate, but that's the hand we've been dealt, right? And like you said, even Taiwan on a big contract, like, was he good last year? Not necessarily, but he was certainly better than he is right now. And he's actually been like okay the past couple of starts. Even last start, I would say he definitely got away with some pitches. The start before that, I'd say he was okay. But again, he's your 5th starter. Like the thing with Taiwan is, yeah, he's bad, but he's going to be hidden in the playoffs. He's the 5th starter. Like he's not going to be out there. You can't hide Castellanos. Like there is no other option right now. And I don't know if a lot of teams would necessarily even be willing to pick up that contract with how he's playing, because if you're the Phillies, you're selling low on him with how he's playing right now. So maybe a couple teams would see that and they'd be intrigued by the idea of buying low on him and thinking that they could get him to turn it around. But I don't know. I mean, I think you've seen other guys who they're seeing improvements in terms of chase rate and stuff like that. Like I think with the veterans like Castellanos, he's kind of just a guy who seems stuck in his ways right now. And I think like Chris said, he is the thing. This is what scares me. I could see him being the reason that we don't win a World Series. Like, I'm not saying it's all on one person. It's never on one person. There's always going to be other things that pop up, but it feels like he could end up being the thing you point to if you don't win a World Series. And again, you look back at last year, we obviously don't make the NLCS without him. I'll say that till the day I die, because that's true. But I'm not going to defend what he's doing right now. And that potential reality does scare me. And I think this city will burn to the ground if he's the reason that they don't make it to the World Series, or if they don't win a World Series. Like if he makes a big mistake, it's not going to be a good look.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I mean, like you said, whenever you're making that kind of money, you can't ride the bench. I mean, that's just not really an option. And like, if you're playing and you're playing this bad, like I don't know. It just seems like he kind of doesn't care. It's like I know he does, but like he doesn't act like he cares. He just makes it seem like, hey, whatever. I'll get it next time. But you can't say that every single day. I mean, there's got to be a next time at some point where you actually do something. And I mean,
Right.
it just feels like when he comes up in a big spot, it's like you might as well just turn the TV off because he's not gonna come through. Like we were at the game against the Cardinals whenever he came up and Ryan Helsley was on the mound, and we might as well have just walked out of the stadium. Like there's just no chance in a world he's hitting that.
Yeah,
guy.
right.
Ever. Like it's just terrible. And
Yeah,
I
right.
mean,
And obviously Helsley is really, really good. Like that's an extreme example, but that's the type of pitchers you're going to see late in the game in the playoffs. Is you're going to see a lot of really good talent, and we just know it's a lost cause because God forbid they have a wicked slider and good night, any sort of like good breaking pitch that'll get him out of the zone. I mean, you're just going to see that over and over again in the playoffs, and they're not going to worry about you sitting on it if you still don't do damage with it, or if you still go out there and wave out of the zone at it. So, point being, it's a scary thought. Like you said, we were at that game. It was just demoralizing to realize that game was over. And then you look at the London game, that at bat was terrible, and that one you knew it was probably over when he came up. I said grounded into a double play. I thought it was going to be up to second base or shortstop. I didn't expect it to end the way it did, right, with it being a force out at home and then throw to first. Heck of a play by the Mets too. But I mean, it's really discouraging to see where we're at right now with that. So yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, obviously he's done it before. We know he has it in him to at least be productive enough. But I don't see it turning around right now. And again, in a year like this where so much of the fan base's energy and focus is towards October, like everything is about what's going to happen in October. It just feels like a lost cause right now. So maybe things will flip around. Like Anthony said, obviously there's enough like of a track record to believe he can still be a league average hitter. I definitely would say that's a fair thing to say. But like he said, he's not super confident in it right now. And that's where I think we're at too. So I don't know. Yeah. And yeah, obviously shout out to Ryan Helsley, our weekly Ryan Helsley trade target talk, but I'm starting to, I don't know. The Cardinals are actually looking pretty decent right now. So is everyone in the NL wild card race because that race is garbage. But point being, I don't know. I don't want to talk too much about Castellanos because we could talk about that all day, but I don't know if you have anything else to say on that.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I can add to that is like the last few weeks, it seemed like it's been kind of like exaggerated, like how bad he's been because he's been hitting between two of your best hitters for 5 weeks now between Schwarber and Harper. I mean, it magnifies it a lot more because people are just going to pitch around the other guys and go after him. And I think that's kind of what we've been seeing because Schwarber's been walking a ton. I think he has the most walks in the NL. So it's just when you come up in a big spot and Schwarber's up to bat with first base open and Castellanos is behind him, I mean, it's just kind of a no-brainer. You just pitch around Schwarber and go after Castellanos.
Right. Yeah, him in the 2-hole has been rough to say the least. I want to say he went 3 for 27, if I'm not mistaken. So
that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. And I see Chris and Dominic both mentioned the high heat too has been also an issue for him as well. Obviously, that has not been a great look. And in that London at bat to end that series, he swung at one like 2 feet over his head and somehow fouled it back too on the second pitch of the at bat there. And like Anthony said, the goal is to have him hitting ninth. I mean, that would be far, far more ideal than what we have right now. Obviously, not the ideal guy to turn it over to the top of the order, but I think the point being with that is you hope you're going to get some sort of deadline acquisition that'll move him down the order to where it's less of a rally killer, right? And I do want to talk about that, Drew. If you have any trade targets in mind or just any, it doesn't have to even be a player, just kind of an archetype of a player you're looking for right now. I know Anthony is in the chat right now. I know he's mentioned Tommy Pham, who that might be a good one to start on because I know you and me have differing views on that, Drew. So maybe we don't start on that one, but I'm just curious. Maybe if you want to start on that one, go for it. But I'm just curious your thoughts on that front right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about it in our group chat or maybe over text, but they kind of need like a guy that's like contact first out there, and he's going to be kind of the same guy every day whenever he comes to the ballpark. I mean, like Castellanos, you have no idea what you're getting. He might go 4 for 4 with 3 doubles and a home run, or he might go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. I mean, you need a guy that's like Whit Merrifield a few years ago, where it's like he's going to hit for average. He's not going to strike out a ton. He won't walk a ton either. But I think they need a guy like that that's going to hit for a decent average and is hitting for a decent average because obviously we're coming up on trade deadline halfway through the season. You kind of know what you're getting out of some guys. Like Luis Robert, he's really, really good, and I would not complain if I got him. But he is a lot like the other guys in the lineup with the swing and miss and not walking a ton. So, I mean, you kind of weigh the good with the bad with him. I mean, obviously he's really good, and we would take him no matter what, as long as the package is right with prospects and whatever else. But, I mean, I think they need a guy that's going to hit for contact for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking for someone kind of similar. Like, I think a right-handed bat obviously would make a ton of sense. You don't want to stack the lefties too much right now. Think for the right lefty, maybe it makes sense. But, I mean, there's not really any, like, really, really talented lefties I would consider that for. I don't think there's any chance Kyle Tucker gets traded, and I don't think the Phillies would win that sweepstakes anyway. I don't think that's worth talking about. But I'm kind of looking for, like, a right-handed bat. I want someone who's going to get on base at a high enough clip and not wave out of the zone. Like if you go on Savant, I'm looking for the guy who's going to be red in the chase rate. I don't care if they're necessarily blue in the whiff or the strikeout percentage, as long as it's not too low. And then I want the red in the walk percentage too. So just to simplify it there, that's kind of what I'm looking for right now. Obviously, I need to be able to hit the ball hard enough. Can play the outfield like decently well. I don't need someone who's going to be a Gold Glover out there, but like I saw Gavin Sheets mentioned in an article, I would view him more as a fourth outfielder, bench bat, pinch hit type of guy. He's a lefty too. He can't really play the outfield very well. Lamont Wade, I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, but he's a lefty who I would consider, but I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be teams who are definitely going to want him if he's available. I saw maybe he might be available. Passan maybe was the one who noted that. I don't want to say for sure. And like Anthony said, I described Randy too. I like Randy a lot. I don't know if the Rays are going to give him up. I don't know if the Phillies would be able to acquire him, but he would make a lot of sense, I think. I mean, obviously he's athletic in the outfield. He's not really a good defensive outfielder, but he's athletic enough to go play left field. Obviously he walks a ton, doesn't chase a ton, but he's had a really rough year. He's whiffing a lot right now. So yeah. That's why maybe you buy low on him. But I mean, those are a couple names. I think honestly, and I know I'm rambling here, but I think honestly, someone like Mark Hanna, he'd be more the conservative move where he obviously has gotten on base at a good clip. You pretty much know what you're getting out of him. He's not going to be very flashy. He could stand out in left field for you if you needed. Maybe stand isn't. That's a little bit of that's more of a negative term, I guess you could say. But I'm not saying it in a negative way towards him. He's fine out there. And again, he's hit lefties pretty well over the past couple of years. So that's kind of something I think you're looking for too, as someone who's going to be able to punish lefties enough. So I don't know. I mean, those are a couple names I've seen flying around that I would be kind of interested in. Obviously, Tyler O'Neill would be interesting. But again, like the thing with this deadline is there's really not going to be a lot of sellers like last deadline. And you have a lot of these teams who are kind of in the mix because of how bad the wild card race is in the NL. And obviously there's some races in the AL that aren't the best too. So I just don't know how many teams are truly going to sell, right? And that's going to make it a little bit more tough for you.
Yeah, and even the teams that are going to sell, a lot of the teams that are really bad, like the White Sox, they only have one or two guys that are actually worth anything. And you're going to have all these teams going after it, whether it's the Dodgers or us or whoever it may be. The Braves obviously need an outfielder, and they have no farm system to give up to get a big prospect or a big player like that. So I don't think you really need to rely or worry about the Braves trading for anybody crazy because their farm is just terrible. I think it's probably the worst one in the MLB, and it's really bad. But anyway, the market is going to be very, very inflated for any kind of big time player like it is every single year. But this year especially because there's so many teams that are going to be thinking they can compete. Like the Marlins last year was a good example. They were a bad team, and they bought at the deadline for whatever reason, and they got embarrassed in the playoffs. And I think there's going to be a ton of teams that end up doing that kind of stuff this year where they could probably sell and get some really good returns on stuff because there's not going to be a ton of good sellers. And I think it's going to be kind of the same as last year, though, where teams buy when they shouldn't.
Right. And who's your definitive sellers right now? It's the Marlins, the Rockies, the White Sox, the Athletics. I guess you probably put the Angels in there too, which, I mean, they don't have a ton of pieces either.
Yeah, and the Mets,
Brandon
I would say
Bird,
they're
yeah,
the Mets are
I would,
definitely going to sell. Like
yeah,
JD
I would
Martinez is gone. Like
100%. Yep. Yeah, I'd put the Mets in there as well. And even then, like they went 5-1 since, or they're 5-0 since scrimmage throughout the first pitch, and now, now they're in the wild. They're kind of like in the wild card race. But I agree. I think they'll end up selling. They're actually a team, like they don't have a ton of like great pieces, but they have a lot of pieces they could sell because they signed a ton of 1-year
definitely,
deals. They'll definitely do well at the deadline if they're going to sell some of those guys off. Like Bader, I think if someone needs a defensive center fielder, that's your guy. Sean Manaea, I believe, is on a 1-year deal too. I think he's kind of overperformed, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't kept up with the Mets very, very closely as far as players go, but there's a number of relievers I think they have they could sell too. Not Jorge Lopez anymore, but number of other guys they could sell. So I would agree. I think they're going to sell. But then you have all these teams in the middle, like the Nationals, the Cardinals, the Pirates, the Cubs. They're all in interesting spots. I think the Cubs, I don't think they'll sell. I think they believe they have a team that could win now. The Diamondbacks just made the World Series. I'd be surprised if they sold. The Giants and Red Sox are once again in the in-between period. I think low-key, I think the Blue Jays could really end up selling. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about it. I don't think that's really a bold take, and they're not really playing that well. And I don't know. I just think it hasn't quite worked out there the way they thought it would with a lot of those pieces they had. So they could sell. The Rays, I don't know what they're going to do. They're a smart organization, though. And then the Tigers, they played well earlier in the year. They kind of fell off a little bit. I would imagine they'll sell off a couple guys too. But
yeah,
I mean, that's a ton of in-between teams right there.
Yeah, and I heard the Tigers have this outfielder. His name is Matt Vierling. I don't know if you know him. Maybe.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Maybe I think Gregory Soto might be a good trade package for him. Just straight
Oh,
up.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. Maybe get Donnie Sands. I think he's all right too.
Yeah, that might be that. I think that's a fair package. And we could probably package Cody Clemens in that trade too if we needed to.
Yeah, if they needed him, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
but
yeah, those teams in the middle, I think some of them made up their minds before the season that they were going to sell, kind of regardless of what. Like the Mets, like they're going to sell Alonso probably, and they're going to get a lot of good stuff for him, I would imagine. Same with JD Martinez, he's having another great season. And the middle teams that already decided that they're going to sell, they might not sell their best players if they're playing good. Like there's some teams that might hold on to their best hitter, even though they wanted to trade him before the season because of how the team's playing in general. But I mean, if you offer them the right package, they're going to sell, no doubt about it. Like the Nationals, I think you could pretty much get any of their guys except for like CJ Abrams and Josiah Gray and whoever else. But I think there's so many bad teams that think they're good and they're really not. And I don't really have anything else to add on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Nationals will sell off the right guys. I don't like Lane Thomas kind of depends on who is willing to, because I don't think he's the hottest trade candidate. He was definitely more intriguing last year, but he hasn't played well this year. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of him. Also not very good in the outfield. But guys like Hunter Harvey, Kyle Finnegan, I mean, they were mentioned today, I believe. Like the relievers, those guys will definitely be available, 100%. I think those guys are very, very gettable at the deadline for sure. And they definitely have a couple other names too. I saw The Athletic mention Jacob Young as a potential outfield fit for us. He's a right-handed outfielder, younger. I don't see the fit there unless he's a fourth guy. I don't know. That was odd. Like he just hit his first major league home run yesterday, I believe, and it was against the Marlins. So I don't know. They have some intriguing pieces though. Thought I would mention that. It was just very weird. But again, there's always a lot of articles flying around there about potential fits and guys mentioned. Like I remember last year it was mentioned, I think, in one of the Athletic articles that the Phillies and Yankees, I think, might have some interest in Dylan Carlson. Obviously nothing happened there. So there's going to be a ton of names that fly around. They may mean something, they may mean nothing. But I don't know. I thought that was an interesting conversation to have with the Rojas thing in mind now that we're about a month and a half away. And this pretty much says they're going to look for an outfielder at the deadline, if not two. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens. Do you think that's more of a need than the bullpen right now? I would say 100%. It's not even close.
Probably. Right. Yeah. I think I agree with you on that. And I mean, kind of to touch on the Marlins a little bit, I think I saw us tied to Tanner Scott, and man, that would be good. That'd be good. Yeah. I mean, I think if they are willing to give him up and it's not for a ton, like as far as prospects go, the Marlins aren't a smart organization as it is. So you could probably get him for like next to nothing. I don't know what his control was like his team control, but if you can do that deal and it's not expensive every day of the week, I mean, that's a nasty reliever. So if you can add that to this already really, really good bullpen, watch out.
Right. No, I would definitely be excited about that potential move. And I believe his contract expires at the end of the year. So he would
That's
be a
perfect.
rental. So he's going to be pretty affordable too. That's very nice to know that. That would make a lot of sense, honestly. And especially with how Soto's pitched this year too, like you have another left-hander in your arsenal if Tanner Scott is able to, if you're able to get
Yeah.
a trade set up for Tanner Scott, which is very exciting. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be very exciting to get a guy like that in the pen. I know I keep saying very exciting, but it is. I mean, he's got really good stuff. Like he's been really, really good this year, and maybe some people see it as more of an outlier year, but I believe he was pretty good last year as well.
Yeah.
So I think something like that would make sense.
I mean, anybody that throws 99 from the left side has very high potential. I mean, obviously, Gregory Soto hasn't really worked out too much. He's had some really good flashes and some really bad ones, but I mean, Tanner Scott, he's nasty. I mean, he really is. So I think if the Phillies can get him, they would definitely do it in a heartbeat as long as the prospect package is right. So
Right.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing is, I see he walks a ton of guys. So that would really be the only concern there. But you hope to bring him into a spot where he's mostly facing left-handed hitters. I don't know what his splits are.
Yeah.
I'd have to check that. But that would be my guess. So I wanted to ask that just because I see a lot of people whenever someone talks about an outfielder or getting an outfield bat, they're like, well, can he pitch? And I'm like, well, they have four guys in the rotation who are pretty dominant right now. And they also have a bullpen that has 4 or 5 guys that are really, really good. Especially Sir Anthony has been really good for a good while now, I will admit. Like
Yeah.
I've been a little cautious about him, but I think he's definitely starting to pitch a lot better now. So you now have, like I said, 4 or 5 guys. You have Alvarado and Hoffman, who are probably your top 2. Kirk Ring's definitely starting to come into his own. Obviously not a great outing in Baltimore, but he's still a guy who I would think can pitch well in high leverage. And then you have Schramm, who's been, I mean, just gave up his first run since opening day the other day against Anthony Santander, who just decided to get extremely hot for that series for whatever reason. Santander, obviously Santander is a pretty good player, but he had an incredible series. I don't know why. And then you have Sir Anthony, who hasn't given up a run since what, May? Maybe
Yeah.
that?
Like
I don't know if he
early April.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I think you could use a guy for sure. And I think a guy like Tanner Scott makes a ton of sense. That he could probably be a guy who just adds depth to the bullpen. But,
Yep.
I don't know if I think it's a little ridiculous to sit here and say, oh, well, can he pitch to an outfield bat? Like, we have a ton of guys who can pitch out of the pen and out of rotation already. So I'm not super, super concerned about that. But I do, like, I've been an advocate for Ryan Helsley for a while. Like, I would still like a bullpen arm. So I'm not saying it's not a need. It's just, I think the outfield's been bottom third of the major leagues this whole season so far.
Yep. I agree with you 100%. And kind of to touch on our starting pitching a little bit, I'm not worried about Zach Wheeler. I mean,
No.
I know that was terrible yesterday, but that's just uncharacteristic out of him. And the Orioles are a really, really good team. So you can't look too deep into that. If you were trying to, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. He's still the first or second best pitcher in baseball. So it's just, I'm unaffected by that, but it was nice, really nice, I should say, to see Ranger come back and do what he did against the Orioles because, like I said, they are a very, very good team, and they're tough to go through every single night. They're kind of like the Phillies were at the beginning of the season. They're tough on starting pitchers.
100%. Yeah. Like you said, not going to worry about yesterday. I mean, that's just going to happen from time to time. And I guess the way you could look at it is it's better it happens all in one start than, scattered. So I think Zach Wheeler, you'll see him come out. What's it, Friday? He'll pitch, or maybe Saturday. You'll see him come out. He's going to come out firing. He'll be right back on track. I'm not super, super concerned about him. And again, like you said, that's a good Orioles lineup. And when the umpire gives Gunnar Henderson a second chance in the first at bat of the game, he does have that potential where he will take you deep and have a leadoff home run to start the game. So the umpiring was obviously not helping him. It didn't do him any favors. I'm not going to sit here and say it costed him the game and that was the reason for all 8 of the runs that scored, but it certainly opened the door for some of them to score. And the umpiring was egregious this whole weekend. There's some things that could be better. Like I know the stock call was not great. I still think with 2 strikes, you got to protect, but it's one of those things where it's like, you got to give us a call at some point. And that was, that and the hit by pitch, I think, were the breaking point for Rob, because that pitch was definitely outside. Maybe he should protect the 2 strikes for sure. I know in the moment I said that in our Discord as well. And, still up for debate, but again, I mean, when Stott's not going he's not going well right now, and then he has to deal with that type of call behind the plate too. It's just like, what am I supposed to do right now? You know, I don't know. The umpires this weekend were egregious, man, and I don't want to say again that they're a reason we lost, but definitely think it should be pointed out. And the challenge system should be implemented halfway through this season. Like, I know that's not going to happen. I know it's not realistic, but with the way this umpiring has, I feel like, Drew, it's been on a whole different level of bad this season. I really don't know what to say about it at this point anymore, other than, when is the challenge system coming? Can we please get it started this upcoming year?
Yeah, it's just, I need it now. This umpiring is just terrible. It's so bad. It's like Angel Hernandez retired, and all the other guys are basically saying, "Hey, we'll pick up your slack, buddy. Don't worry about it."
Right.
And it's just, I don't know. These last few series have just been terrible, to say the least. There's really just no nice way to put it. And that's the most pissed off I've seen Rob Thompson ever be. I mean, you probably will never see it again, because it takes quite a lot to upset that guy like that. And it's a shame, really. It just ruins the game.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it can take a team out of a game very quickly. They got to do something about it, man. Like, there's got to be more accountability for these guys too. And we've been saying that for years, and nothing changes. But I'm glad they at least have these, the automatic ball strike system in AAA and the challenge system now in the lower levels. They're at least trying to create ways to make it better too. So, and again, like Sir said, I don't know if they abuse it, but I don't even know if it takes 30 seconds. You and me both seeing examples of it, Drew. It takes 10, 15 seconds at most. It's pretty quick.
I would say probably 10.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It happens almost instantaneously, and then the next at bat, pitch clock goes back. I don't think it's going to mess with the pace of play more than that. Over the course of a game, that might add 1-2 minutes at most, possibly. They're not going to. I don't know if they're going to necessarily abuse it, because they'll put a limit on it as well. But yeah, I certainly think I think that's coming. I mean, we talked about that with Alex Carr at the start of the season. I don't think I think next year you could definitely see that implemented into the league for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, because it's just, something needs to change. I don't know what it is exactly. I'm no expert, but I mean, you need to at least be able to challenge somehow that strikes and balls, especially late in games. It destroys rallies, and then you're pretty much just knocked down for the rest of the game if you get called out on the third strike on a ball. It's just,
yeah,
it's so killer, especially whenever there's a runner's scoring position, especially on third with one out, and you strike out on a ball, and it's terrible. But I mean, Christopher just said, according to umpire scorecards yesterday, it was above average. I don't care. I just don't care. The umpiring's been terrible, and it's always been against us, it feels like. Obviously, some umpires are just terrible, and they give wide strike zones or small strike zones to everybody. But it just seems like lately, obviously things will swing back in our favor at some point, and we will get saved. But it's just, lately it's been so bad. It's all been against us, it feels like. But as far as the above average thing, I just, it doesn't account for so many things. Whether it's the strike zone that's on there on the scorecards is not the same as the actual strike zone on the TV. So I don't know which one's accurate and which one's not, but it's a disaster.
I saw a video, and I know Chris is mostly being sarcastic, because I saw he was upset about the umpire yesterday.
I know he was being sarcastic.
Yeah,
but
just
the fact that that's
the rest of our chat who thought you were taking a jab at Chris, but
no, I was not. Yeah. Definitely
not. But I saw a video, and it was one broadcast on the one channel for, I forget what game it was. They had the pitch clearly outside of the zone. The other broadcast for the other local team had it clearly in the zone. And it's can we figure out what the actual strike zone is, please? Can we get an actual grasp on that as fans? I don't know why we can't, on the TV for one, have the accurate strike zone. On the MLB app, then that says something completely different. So is that the right strike zone? The ESPN app says it has it in a different spot. Is that the right strike zone? And then you have umpire scorecards, which they have a different strike zone. So can we please get a uniform strike zone that is going to work for everyone, that adjusts for each hitter too? Because I mean, they already have that I would guess they have that in the minor leagues. That's why they have the challenge system implemented, because they know what it is or not. So why can't we as fans sit here and get the accurate strike calls and know what to be mad at or not too? But then there's also just calls that are just clearly, it doesn't matter. Like they're just clearly out of the zone. So it's so frustrating, man. I mean, and also just on that note, like umpires aside, tell me how the scorers are going to call that Castellanos throw an error yesterday. And we were just trashing Castellanos earlier in this pod, but I mean, that's going to end his errorless streak. That throw, when it was clearly Stubbs, it was the Stubbs throw to second base that was the error there. So I couldn't tell you how that was an error from Castellanos where he threw it on a bounce to home plate. I don't know, but like baseball, man, you gotta love it. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and the umpire scorecard thing, I just wanted to touch on this a little bit because I kind of understand how it works. Like it takes into account nothing to do with what happens after or before the pitch that is missed. It just takes into account like if there's runners in scoring position or if there's 1 out, 2 outs, 0 outs. Like 0 outs, a missed strike call or a missed ball is like it basically has no effect on the inning as far as they're concerned, even though Gunnar Henderson hit that home run right after it happened. Like they just don't care about that. They just see, oh, he missed a strike call whenever it was 1 and 2, and it didn't really change the at bat in their eyes, but it did in the long term.
Yeah, great point by Dominic there, but it's so frustrating, man. And like Robert said, maybe we need a whole panel of umpires behind home plate to really see whether it's a ball or strike or not at this point, because I don't know what else is the solution, but it feels like eventually, like years and years down the road, they'll move to the automatic system. I don't know. We'll see. Depends who's commissioner. Depends on the optics of it, because obviously there's an umpire union, I believe, correct?
And they're fully protected.
Yep. So that's part of it. I'd like to think in the future at some point we'll just have an automatic zone, but at the same time, on the other side of that, you see now in AAA. I mean, look at our top 2 pitching prospects outside of Painter. You have Abel and McGarry. They go up to AAA, and I mean they are walking loads and loads of hitters now, and they're just having so many problems down there because of this automatic zone. So that's the other side of it too. But it's a big adjustment. I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, you need accountability, like Dominic said, but it's not happening.
And like the closest thing you can do to humiliating or embarrassing an umpire is like what Castellanos did the other day. Like you got to speak the F up, like, like it's just, there's no accountability. And that umpire knew he was wrong because he didn't say a word whenever Castellanos said that. Like you got to let these guys know when the clock's running or when you're starting the clock, because they got to like wave their finger in the air or whatever it is for when they start the clock. And obviously he didn't do that. And then he calls a violation on Castellanos, and he had no idea the clock was running. Right. So, I mean, Castellanos was 100% right though. Like, and that umpire knew it. So, you could just tell by the guy's like expression after Castellanos said that to him.
Right. Yeah.
I just laughed thinking about it.
And the fact he didn't throw him out either. Like, he wasn't.
Yeah.
He was so scared. He knew he was so embarrassed that he didn't even have the wherewithal to be like, all right, you're done. You don't talk to an umpire that way. He just knew Castellanos was right. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's crazy. It's gonna be crazy when the challenge system gets implemented too, and there's like a final strike 3 call that decides a game, and a challenge overturns it. Like that could, that would be seriously crazy to see if that could overturn the outcome of something at some point. But
and I don't know how like the challenge system works. Like, does every team get like so many challenges as a team, and do you lose them if you mess up or if you keep them?
That's a good question. I'm really not sure. I've seen like 3 challenges or something like that. But again, I don't know if that's per inning, per batter, per team. Like I really don't know. So I guess we'll find out when it comes to the big leagues. But that's a good question. I'm really not sure like how they're managing that. So I don't know.
Because like what I was gonna say is like if the team as a whole gets so many challenges, I don't want Nick Castellanos using the challenge. I want Bryce Harper or Kyle Schwarber using the challenge, or Trey Turner.
Yeah, seriously.
I just like there's some guys that have no feel at all for the strike zone, and Castellanos is one of them. Obviously, I mean it's gonna be so like weird at first to see these guys challenging pitches because it's just you never seen that before.
Yeah, like Schwarber and Stott are the 2 guys who I'm like, you guys get as many challenges as you like. You can use all of them if you want.
Same with Marsh. Marsh is getting really
Marsh too. Marsh has become a much more patient and disciplined hitter. Absolutely.
And obviously, Bryce is probably one of the best guys in the league. I mean, he knows the strike zone better than the guy catching the ball. So
yeah, right. But yeah, to your point, there's a couple guys you probably wouldn't want that for, and even on the mound too. There's probably a couple guys who you may not want that for as well. But
Yeah,
that would certainly be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what it's like next year. And like we talked about with Alex Carr, it'd be very exciting if William Bergoya gets up here at some point. We get to see him with the challenge system because apparently he's just 100% on that. I went to Lakewood last week, saw him play, and he hit really well in that game. And I see he's been hitting really well in the past couple games too. So a quick little minor league shout out to Bergoya. He's been really, 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 really good this year. So that's exciting.
Yeah. And kind of speaking of the minor leagues real quick, Aiden Miller hit his first high A home run. That was exciting. Man,
107
that kid,
no big deal.
Yeah, that kid is just ridiculous. He's going to be so good, and nobody is trading for him from us this season during the trade deadline. There's just no way. And it's like him and Painter are the untouchables, and then after that, Kaba and Tate, I think, are pretty hard to get from us, but I guess we'll see. But yeah, I was going to say Aiden Miller, he's just so good, and he's going to be so good, and he's only 19 or 20, so just something definitely to look forward to in the next few years.
Yeah, he was a little cold for his first couple of games down there, and then he, what he does, he comes back and hits a triple and a home run right after that. So yeah, he wasn't going to stay cold for very long. It's very exciting, and yeah, like Chris said, some positive news on Griff, 3 earned runs over his last 11 games. So that's encouraging to see him pitching a little bit better right now out of the bullpen, and I'm curious to see if he can kind of get back to his form too, and maybe that's something they try with Mick at some point with where he's at right now, because on the negative side, he has been really, really bad. And he just got rocked the other day in his recent start. Yeah. So I think he gave up 5 home runs in that start alone. Not encouraging. And he's probably not going to be a very enticing trade piece at this point. And it went from, I don't think you want to trade Mick last year to now, what value could you get for him? That's kind of a fan conversation. So I don't know, man. I don't know. But that's really all I had in the minor leagues. I don't know if you had anything else there.
No, I think I covered pretty much everything. I mean, other than, I guess I can say Eduardo Tate's been really, really good. And man, those Kaba and Tate are going to be so special. I mean, they're both really, really good. And it's looking like they're living up to the hype so far.
The FCL team has been really fun to watch over the past couple years. They're really, really freaking good. But I did want to talk a little bit about the past week too, because we haven't talked since the end of the London series, I believe. Yep. And the Boston series obviously did not go too well outside of the first game. And then same thing happened in Baltimore too. But I believe we went 10-10 over our last 20, and we gained 2 games on the Braves. So this is going to be our worst stretch of the year. I'm not super, super concerned. And the Red Sox, they're always tough, man. Like they've got talent for sure. And they've got guys who will perform a little better than they should at sometimes. And they just beat, like, they're a fun team. Like they just beat New York last night too, in pretty dominating fashion. They won that series against them. Like New York's right up there with us for the best team in baseball. So I'm not super upset about that. Oh, go for it.
I actually saw the Red Sox stole 9 bases last night against the Yankees. That's crazy. That's like, it's like an MLB record or something like that. I don't know, but that's just wild. And like you said, the Red Sox are dangerous when they want to be.
Yeah, could be your small ball Cinderella wildcard type of team in the playoffs. Like I
never know. And
they have the pitching to do it too. Like they're definitely not a team to sleep on right now. That's why you maybe hold on to Tyler O'Neill if you're the Red Sox as well. But like they had of course he had a good series. He's seen my videos. He knows that I want him traded to the Phillies, and of course he had to go off in that series. But no, in all seriousness though, like they had a really good like past couple games, last couple of series too. And obviously in that last game, they're facing Tanner Houck. I mean, honestly, Phillies weren't even that bad against Tanner Houck. It was just Knowles just had a bad day. I mean, it's just going to happen. That's the nice thing. You got Knowles and Wheeler. They both had their probably worst starts of the year. You get them out of the way this week. You move forward. It is what it is. Like, don't worry about it. And that second game that felt like the one they could have won, and felt like there were some missed opportunities in that one in Boston as well. That was disappointing. And Chris Sanchez did not have his best night. He still battled. Bryce went over and talked to him, and then he gets through that 4th inning. So that was good to see. But him not having his best stuff and only going 4 innings really hurt the Phils in that game. And then you had to go to Jose Ruiz. You then went to obviously we're kind of seeing Jose Ruiz. We're seeing he has some issues right now too. That's why he's a depth piece. He's not one of your high leverage guys. And then you go to Turnbull, who hadn't pitched in 11 days, and that's what's going to happen. And he pitched better the other day. I think it was yesterday he pitched. But the Boston series, I'm really not upset about, and I'm really honestly, like I'm really stoked about how they won that first game in Baltimore. Like that was awesome. That was an awesome
Yeah,
game after the play and everything. I'm still excited about that one.
yeah. I mean, the Phillies they'll compete with any team, even on their worst days. And like we saw, like the worst they're gonna lose is by 4 or 5 runs, and there's a lot of teams that are losing by 4 or 5 runs every night. So it's just even on your worst night, whenever your ace gives up 8 runs or whatever it was, you still find a way to make the game kind of close and entertaining. And I think they load the bases up late in the game or something like that.
In the Boston game, or which
No, in
game is it?
the last game against Baltimore.
Oh, yes, yesterday they did. Yep,
Yeah,
and I forget who came up to bat to end the game, but was it Castellanos? I certainly hope it wasn't.
probably. But
Yeah,
anyway, yeah, like the fact that they're even fighting back late in games like that just kind of tells you the character of this team, and they don't give up. So that's
yeah,
something good that you need to carry over into October and late in the season.
yeah. It was Sosa. My bad. Enough Castellanos hate for today already earlier in the pod, but no,
Poor
like
guy,
you
he
said,
just gets slandered.
right? No, like even in that game, like you said, they still find a way to battle and make it close. And there was a throwing error in that inning too, but again, they're finding ways to fight back. And I think you've seen they've had a number of games where they've been down and they've come back too earlier this year. So I'm not super concerned about how this past week went. I still feel very good about where the team is at. And Baltimore's a good team. You're going to lose to good teams sometimes. That's just what's going to happen. It's part of baseball. So yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good. Like I think they're going to bounce back in the San Diego series. Obviously, San Diego is not an easy matchup, but I would hope Christopher Sanchez bounces back tonight. Tomorrow's matchup I think should be really good. Aaron Nola versus Michael King. Michael King's definitely. I mean, I believe they both have those sinkers or two seamers that have. I think they both get 22 inches of run, if I'm not mistaken. So I know Nola does, but I think Michael King does as well. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch both of them trying to go backdoor to righties and then or get lefties jammed inside. So that's going to be a good pitching matchup, obviously. And then you've got Matt Waldron. We'll probably see a knuckleball or two on
Oh,
Wednesday.
geez.
Ranger Suarez, which very crafty pitchers there. So the last two matchups of the series should be very good. It would be very nice if you could win tonight with Sanchez on the mound. I feel like you have the advantage there. I didn't even recognize who was pitching for the Padres, Randy Vasquez. So I know he's been around for a couple years now. He had a little bit of a nice stint with New York, but I don't think that's anyone super special that the Phillies should have trouble with, which is why they'll probably have trouble with him. But I don't know. What are your thoughts going into this San Diego series?
Win 2 out of 3. That's really just all you can ask. I mean, you got to win pretty much every series if you want to win 100 games. And I think the Phillies have aspirations to do that this year based on how they played in the first month or month and a half of the season. So I think 2 out of 3 would be acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting too. And I think the bats will heat up a little bit this series as well. And again, there are some bats in that San Diego lineup, obviously. Like they might not look like it record-wise, but they're all in. They are 100% all in. They are looking to get one of those wild card spots and to find a way to have one of those Cinderella runs. Like they want to get back to the postseason. They missed it last year, obviously. Obviously, there were some issues with the clubhouse too that were talked about with Machado and everything. Soto left them or got traded. There's obviously some things I'm sure they want to redeem themselves this year. So this is a good series for them. It's a good opportunity for them to show that they're not, and to prove to themselves that they're not just a half decent team, that they could actually compete. So they're going to be coming into Citizens Bank Park, I'm sure, ready to win. I think they just lost a series to the Mets, if I'm not mistaken. Did they get swept?
I think so. Yeah. The Mets are 5-0. So
right.
Since what's his name?
Grimace threw out the first pitch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're not happy about that. So you definitely can't take them lightly. I know that they have a ton of guys who are underperforming right now, but again, you make a bad pitch, they have the guys who will take advantage of it. So, and as far to answer your question, Dominic, Taiwan's given up 9 home runs in 49 innings. So you were very close, but it's like you said, it's mind-boggling. Again, everything feels like it's 100 off the bat, but money is why he is out there. And Turnbull also managing his innings, coming off of years and years of injuries too. So there's a number of reasons. Again, the nice thing is he will not be pitching in the playoffs. That's at least the comfort you can take in that. Yeah,
I mean, there's really no silver lining with Taiwan at this point, other than the fact that he's eating innings. But it's just a bad contract.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else that I thought was too big to talk about. I think we've talked about pretty much everything from the Rojas situation to last week and then this upcoming week. So, is there anything else you
Yep.
wanted to touch on? Any comments you wanted to touch on before we head out of here?
No, I think we're all good.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And
Yeah, absolutely.
content's definitely going to be heating up as we get into the trade deadline talks and just talk about. I'm sure we'll talk about all-star stuff a little bit, which will be exciting too. But things are definitely starting to heat up right now with Major League Baseball season. So it's exciting to think about, and a lot of stuff to talk about right now too. And yeah, there's a good number of you guys in here this stream, so we really appreciate all the comments and for just talking Phils with us for a little bit. And anything you want to say, Drew, before we sign off?
Nope. I appreciate everybody. I mean, like, I think pretty much everybody in here is pretty much a regular, but if you're not in the Discord, join the Discord. I posted it in the chat. I pinned it, so easy to find, but there's always people in there talking Phils, especially during the games. So if something bad happens and you want to rant about it, you can come in there and do that. So yeah, I mean, other than that, everybody just enjoy your night, go watch the Phils win, hopefully. So yeah, other than that, I think we're good to go.
Yeah. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Keep the noties on for any trade deadline videos and any short videos we're going to be posting. So thank you guys again for watching. Really appreciate it. God bless y'all. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Peace out.